Midnight, Chapter 3. The Queen versus Midnight. One afternoon, when Queen Victoria was playing croquet in the gardens of one of her palaces with the Prince of Wales and the Prime Minister and the poet, she suddenly stopped playing and looked thoughtful. It is hard to tell whether she was losing because she was thoughtful, or whether she became thoughtful because she was losing and wanted to change the subject. At any rate, the Queen stopped and said, "What is the news of Midnight?" "Nothing new, Mamma," said the Prince of Wales. "He is ravaging and pillaging the colony quite as usual." The poet laureate, who was a poetic, began to say something about Robin Hood. "Stuff and nonsense," said the Queen. "There will be no Robin Hoods in our reign." The Prime Minister, a very smooth person, murmured, "I agree with Her Majesty. This ruffian must be abolished." "Is he a ruffian?" asked the Prince of Wales. "He is said by Mrs. Sheffield to be most polite." "A preposterous woman," said the Queen, crossly, taking off her crown and mopping her brow with a priceless handkerchief. "We are hot and disagreeable," she explained. "We shall go and sit in the shade." And she walked away towards a small throne under an immemorial elm tree, taking by surprise the three little Maharajas who held up the train of her robes while she played the game, so that they were dragging along behind. The visitors sat down in the grass and watched as the Queen's giant slaves fanned her with peacock feathers. When the Queen looked cooler, the Prince of Wales remarked, "Mamma, I think you are unjust to Midnight. He is only young, after all." "And he is very romantic," said the poet laureate. "And you, sir," said the Queen to the Prince, "are also young. And you, sir," she added to the poet laureate, "are also romantic. And for these reasons, Captain Midnight, we suppose, should be forgiven?" "Ha ha," said the Prime Minister, laughing like a waterfall of brilliantine. "Your Majesty is very quick." "Dear Prime Minister," said the Queen fondly, "what is your opinion of Midnight?" "He is a danger to property, ma'am," said the Prime Minister. "He is a revolutionary. The very money in the Bank of England grows nervous and pale when he is spoken of. Abolish him, ma'am." "So we shall," said the Queen, with a stern glance. "Poet laureate, ring the bell for the Postmaster General. We are going to write a letter." The Queen wrote the letter, and the Postmaster General posted it, and went away on a beautiful sailing ship called the Wool Clipper, in the direction of the Indian Ocean. After many storms and shipwrecks and mutinies and murders of captains by cannibals on desert islands, the ship arrived at the coast of Western Australia, and the one sailor who had not died of scurvy on the voyage ran with all speed to Government House. The government was walking in the garden near the river, wearing a hat with ostrich feathers on it and a gold sword. "What is it?" he asked the ragged and unhealthy-looking sailor as he languidly took a pinch of snuff. Okay, there's a picture here on this page. "A letter from Her Majesty," said the sailor, and with a loyal smile he dropped dead. The governor read the Queen's letter and turned pale as he read. This is what it said. "From the Tower of London, 4th of July, 1866. Sir, it is with feelings of anger and dismay that we read daily in our loyal Times of the liberties taken by horrid Captain Midnight with the people, horses, cattle, sheep, and money of our beloved colony. It is our will and pleasure that Midnight be abolished on receipt of this letter. If this is not done, we shall have no choice but to withdraw our patronage. Yours, etc., Victoria R." "Heavens," groaned the governor, as he paced back and forth. "I shall lose my house and my job, and all because of Midnight." Just then, he saw a long, thin, smiling man walking towards him. The man stopped and saluted very politely, and the governor said to himself, "What a nice-looking chap." "Trooper O'Grady, Your Excellency," said the man. "At your service." "I'm delighted to see you," said the governor. "I have just had a threatening letter from the Queen." "Oh," said the trooper. "How did it leave Her Majesty?" "Very cross," said the governor. "Her Majesty insists that Midnight be abolished immediately." The trooper sucked in his cheeks and gave a low whistle. "It will not be easy," he said, shaking his head. "It is impossible," sighed the governor. "The man is a demon, a mastermind. I think you will soon have a new governor, Trooper O'Grady." "Your Excellency," said Trooper O'Grady, with his nicest smile, "be a man, sir. Don't give way to despair, sir. With skill and courage, even Midnight himself can be outwitted." "Do you think so?" exclaimed the governor eagerly. "Thank you for those bold words, Trooper O'Grady." "Your Excellency," said the trooper, taking off his hat in an important manner, "I will swear an oath, here in your presence, until Midnight is captured I shall not rest. I will be like the bloodhound, sir. I will be like the hawk, sir. That man will be captured, sir, or my name is not O'Grady." The governor, who did not know that O'Grady's name really was Murphy, cheered up tremendously at this fighting speech and cried, "Spoken like a man! Shake hands, O'Grady!" "Thank you, sir," said O'Grady, wringing the governor's hand most heartily. "I shall leave today, sir. You will hear good news from me before long." "Good luck and Godspeed," said the governor, shaking hands again. "The best wishes of the Empire go with you." Then O'Grady bowed and put on his hat and went away with a firm step to have a glass of beer, leaving the governor staring at his right hand and wondering what had become of the ring that was usually on it. One day, Midnight sent Jip to Mrs. Schiffel's house to borrow a cup of sugar, and when Jip came back he had a letter on his collar. Midnight opened it, and this is what he read. "Mrs. Schiffel requests the pleasure of Captain Midnight's company at dinner on Friday the 13th of October at 5 o'clock. Midnight had never been out to dinner and was rather curious to know what a dinner party was like, but at the same time he saw that it might be dangerous. After talking over the matter with Cat, he wrote the following reply. "Captain Midnight has much pleasure in accepting Mrs. Schiffel's invitation for October 13th, but begs to inform Mrs. Schiffel that if this is a trap, then Captain Midnight's ferocious Siamese confederate will boil Mrs. Schiffel in oil and send her skeleton to the museum." Midnight gave this letter to Major, who flew away with it to Mrs. Schiffel. When Friday came, Midnight beat his sheepskin shoes with a broom and put a clean handkerchief over his face and rode off to the dinner party. He left Red Ned in the bush as usual and crept up to Mrs. Schiffel's house. The house was full of lamps and people talking and laughing, and when Midnight peered in he could see nothing but beautifully dressed ladies. It certainly did not look like a trap, so Midnight pulled his hat down over his eyes and pulled his handkerchief up to his cheekbones and went in. "Dear Captain Midnight," cried Mrs. Schiffel, running to meet him, "how good of you to come." "It is a pleasure, ma'am," said Midnight shyly. "She stepped immediately into the drawing-room," said Mrs. Schiffel, "and be presented to my guests." As soon as Midnight walked into the drawing-room, all the visitors went, "Ooh," and Midnight saw that there was nobody there except ladies. Mrs. Schiffel was a fairly clever woman, and she knew that although most of the ladies in the colony were in love with Midnight, most of the men in the colony wanted to put him in jail, so she had not invited any men at all. Midnight stood there looking at the ladies and blushing under his handkerchief and feeling very shy because he had never spoken to a lady in his life until he met Mrs. Schiffel. As he looked at the ladies, something funny happened to him, and he clutched his chest and groaned. "Captain Midnight," said Mrs. Schiffel, "what is the matter?" "My heart," groaned Midnight. "Why?" said Mrs. Schiffel, getting worried. "Are you ill?" "I think I have fallen in love," said Midnight. "Oh, how romantic," cried Mrs. Schiffel. "Who is it? Do tell." "No, Mrs. Schiffel," said Midnight, gritting his teeth. "The secret I must keep locked in my own breast." After making this resolution, he walked sternly round the room, shaking hands with the ladies, but when he came to the young lady who had caused him to fall in love, he was so nervous his hand shook and he dared not look at her. This young lady was called Mrs. Laura Wellborn, and she was exceedingly beautiful. I am not going to say what colour her eyes were or what colour her hair was. You will just have to imagine for yourself the most beautiful young lady in the world. "Why, Captain Midnight," said Laura in a voice like music, "how cold your hand is and how nervous you are." "It is nothing, Miss Wellborn," said Midnight bravely, "an old wound that troubles me at this time of the year." Then he took Miss Laura's arm and they went in to dinner, and a very good dinner it was, although it was awkward for Midnight to have to push his fork up under his handkerchief, and he got rather messy. As well as good food, there was a lot of Mr. Macpherson's famous wine, but Midnight did not have any because he thought it might not be good for him. After dinner they all went back to the drawing-room, and Mrs. Schiffel gave Midnight a cigar, but he did not smoke it in case it should make his teeth turn yellow. Then all the ladies fetched their music and played the piano and sang. This went on for a long time, and Midnight was getting rather bored, but when Miss Laura Wellborn got up to sing, he felt quite differently. First, Miss Laura sang a song which must have been very funny, for all the ladies were laughing, but as it was in Scotch, Midnight did not understand a word of it, except for the bit of the chorus which went, "O Jock, dinna flee, where art thou fear to me? Bide under my plaidawee, my dowsy gow kit laddie." Whenever she sang this part, Miss Laura looked at Midnight with smiling eyes, and he got very hot under his handkerchief, although he never heard a sillier song. Next, Miss Laura sang a song with a sad yet gay tune, and she sang with her sad gay eyes fixed on Midnight. This is what the song said. "Alack, alas," cried Robin Hood, "I am a thief full bold, and Marian is a better thief, and steals my heart as I steal gold. No better thief lives under sky than beauty in a woman's eye. Hey nonny no, poor Robin Hood, love hunts thee down in the green, green wood." When Miss Laura had come to the end of this beautiful song, Midnight could do nothing except look at her, and Miss Laura suddenly laughed and said in her musical voice, "I know one thing about Captain Midnight. His eyes are blue." "Oh, are they?" said Midnight, blushing. "Well, of course they are, Miss Laura. Don't you know what colour your own eyes are?" That made Midnight extremely miserable, because it showed that Miss Laura thought he was stupid. He was stupid, as a matter of fact, but he did not know this, and he did not like Miss Laura to think so. Soon afterward he said goodbye to all the ladies and went back into the dark bush where Red Ned and Jip and Major and Cat were waiting. Then he and Cat sprang into the saddle, and they all galloped away. It was still spring, and the air smelled of all the flowers in the bush, and the moon was out, and it was such a beautiful night that they went on galloping and galloping and galloping for miles and miles, and almost forgot where they were going. Midnight was thinking about Miss Laura, and Cat was thinking about whatever it is that cats think about. They must have galloped for half an hour when they came to some fields full of grapevines, and a house with lights in the windows. "What house is that?" said Midnight to Cat. "It is Mr. Macpherson's cellar," said Cat, "where he makes that famous wine." "I've never tasted wine," said Midnight. "Nor have I," said Cat. "I should like to try it, just once," said Midnight. "Shall we bushrange some?" "Why not?" said Cat. "It's a beautiful night for bushranging." They left Red Ned and Jip and Major in the deep shadow under some olive trees and stealthily crept up to the house. They could tell by the lights behind the curtains that Mr. Macpherson had visitors in the drawing-room, but the end of the house where the cellar was looked dark and safe. There they found a small door, and Midnight boldly forced the lock and led the way down the stairs into the cellar. The moonlight lit up the whole room, and they saw that it was filled with huge dark barrels lying on their sides. "Every one of them is full of wine," whispered Cat. There were a lot of funny-shaped glasses on a table, and Midnight took one and went to a barrel which had sort of like a tap on it and filled the glass to the brim. "What is it like?" asked Cat. "It's hard to describe," said Midnight, tasting the wine. "It's rather sweet, and when you swallow it you feel warm." "Let me taste it," said Cat. So Midnight searched around until he found a little basin and filled it with wine and set it on the floor for Cat. "It is unusual," said Cat when he tried it. "Do you like it?" asked Midnight. "I do love it," said Cat, and went on lapping up the wine as fast as he could go. What Midnight and Cat did not remember was that wine and such things have a kind of poison in them which gets into people's heads and makes them go silly, so that they cannot think or talk properly. That is called getting drunk. After Midnight had swallowed 10 glasses of wine and Cat had lapped up 3 basinfuls, this is how they were talking. "I am in love with Cat," said Midnight, "with a beautiful angel called Miss Laura Wellborn." "That is nothing," scoffed Cat. "I have been in love 9 times. "You're a darn liar," said Midnight. "Did you call me a liar?" said Cat. "Yes, I did," said Midnight. "If you were not so stupid," said Cat, "you would know that it is dangerous to call me a liar." "Why?" said Midnight. "Because I might cut you up into little pieces," said Cat, "and post you in a brown paper parcel to a false address." "You do not know how to post a parcel," said Midnight. "If you ever call me a liar again," said Cat, "I will learn." Midnight did not know what to say to that, so he filled up his glass and Cat's basin, and they were quiet for a while. "What does it feel like?" Cat asked in a more friendly voice, being in love with Miss Laura Wellborn. "It makes me want to cry," said Midnight, bursting into tears. "Then why be in love with her," said Cat, "if it makes such a donkey of you?" "You have no heart, Cat," said Midnight, sniffing. "That is not true," said Cat. "I have a heart and a brain as well." "I'm awfully miserable," said Midnight. "Why?" asked Cat. "I think Miss Wellborn thinks I'm stupid." "She had better not think that," said Cat crossly. "Nobody's allowed to think you're stupid except me." "Thank you, Cat," said Midnight, stroking Cat's fur. "You are a good friend." "I am the best friend you have, Midnight," said Cat, purring. They had another glass of wine and another basin of wine, and then Cat started running around in circles and jumping in the air. "Whee!" he called. "Look, I can fly round and round like Major. You fly too, Midnight." Midnight tried to fly, but he was too heavy. "It's no good," he said. "Cat, you can't talk properly." "You can't talk properly too," said Cat. "Can't I though?" said Midnight. "It's funny." "It's funny," agreed Cat, giggling. "What's the matter?" asked Midnight. "You're drunk," laughed Cat. "Drunk?" asked Midnight. "What? Wine makes people drunk," said Cat. "I forgot." "Wine makes cats drunk too," said Midnight. "Am I drunk?" asked Cat. "Yes," cried Midnight with a shout of laughter. "You're drunk as a skunk, and so am I." They laughed and laughed and laughed until they choked on their wine. Then there came a sudden sound at the door that led from the cellar to the house, and they stopped laughing. "Quick, hide!" whispered Cat, staggering behind a barrel. But it was too late for Midnight. The door opened, and there stood Mr. Macpherson with a lantern. "Midnight!" exclaimed Mr. Macpherson when he saw Midnight's sheepskin shoes. "Yes," said Midnight, starting to laugh again. "Mr. Macpherson?" "Trooper O'Grady!" called Mr. Macpherson into the house. "Yes," called Trooper O'Grady's voice, coming near. "What's the matter?" "Trooper O'Grady's drunk too," giggled Midnight. "So he ought to be," said Mr. Macpherson sternly. "He has drunk 6 bottles of my famous wine." Trooper O'Grady came to the door at the top of the stairs and stood there beside Mr. Macpherson, smiling all over his face. "Hello, Midnight," he said. "How are you?" "I'm happy," said Midnight. "How are you?" Come up here, said Trooper O'Grady. It's dark down there. All right, said Midnight, beginning to climb the stairs and falling all over the place. Careful, said O'Grady, laughing. Don't laugh, said Midnight. It's not funny. What a chap you are, said O'Grady. Here, grab my hand. So Midnight grabbed the trooper's hand, and the trooper hauled him up the stairs to the top. By the time they were laughing fit to bust. What's funny? Asked Midnight. You're funny, said O'Grady. It's not funny, said Midnight. My cat's funny. Why is your cat funny? Asked O'Grady. My cat's drunk, said Midnight. What? What'd you say? My cat can't talk properly, said Midnight, laughing in the trooper's face. Then Midnight and Trooper O'Grady hung around each other's necks and laughed until they were tired, and until O'Grady had picked all Midnight's pockets. After that, O'Grady put the handkerchiefs on Midnight's wrists and took him away to the great grey jail by the sea.